I got people who said, well, what is that? Like, what is digital transformation? What do you mean by that? And it seemed to mean different things to a lot of people. So I thought, let me first like set the ground rules, or like, so we're all on the same playing field. What is digital transformation and what is it not? And then I want to introduce three of the most critical components to this whole world of digital disruption and digital transformation, which is people, process, and technology. And I want to introduce what that means in this whole world that we're now experiencing. And I want you to think about, what are your organization's challenges? Normally, if I would give this in a live audience, we would banter back and forth, because I suspect, regardless of whether you're in the oil and gas industry or healthcare or financial services or manufacturing, high probability that your challenges with digital transformation and digital disruption probably are the same. So I want you to think about, what are your challenges? And then I want to talk about some common challenges and ways to overcome these common challenges based on iconic industrial leaders that have gone before us in this journey, and what they've experienced. And when they had to hit the restart button, I had the opportunity of meeting with several executives and interviewing them when I was writing the field guide. And they kind of shared the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I want to share that with you tonight as well. I found the quote down below from Martin Luther King Jr. just to be so appropriate for the world that we are living in today. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today, and we are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. It seems like the pandemic, even though we were already headed in the world of digital disruption, the pandemic threw us into overdrive. And now it's, how are organizations responding? How are we personally responding? It's affected everything around us. And I am one of these really positive people. So my belief is, I embrace the disruption, and because a lot of good is going to come of it. So I just thought this quote was very appropriate for where we are today. I don't know why this quote has showed up multiple times on the screen. At least it's showing up multiple times on mine, but if you don't mind, I'll let you read it for a minute. Yes. So in today's world of digital disruption, it's not enough for organizations to merely be up to date. They need to be ahead of the curve and embrace the future before it even comes. Forward thinking, risk taking, staying on the offensive decision making, and being resilient to always think bigger of what is possible will be the organizations who are leaders in the global industry. One of the things, again, when I talked to organizations a year ago in the beginning of the pandemic, it was, you know what, we don't have time for digital transformation. We'll do it later. And I used to think, today is the slowest day you are ever going to experience, because the pace of change is faster than it's ever been. And the thing is, tomorrow it's going to even be faster than it is today. So if you don't make a change and a commitment now, high probability that organizations that don't are not going to be in existence in the years to come, and in the short years to come. So first, let's just get grounded with, what is industrial disruption? Industrial disruption, it's not a word or a term that I've coined. It's been around since the 1800s. And there's disruption, industrial 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and we're actually in the midst of starting 5.0, believe it or not. So when I talk about industrial disruption 4.0, or when I talk about digital disruption 4.0, it's all one and the same. The 1.0 was the steam engine and water power. So going away from the horse-drawn farm equipment and getting the steam power. 2.0, so in the years between 1.0 and 2.0, there was some overlap. And this is when you got the mass production. Henry Ford, his assembly line, basically it was lean, if you think about it. So the assembly line, electricity. In 3.0, this is now when we're into the 1900s, and computers and automation and robotics start to play a key role in the way our world is. And now with 4.0, this is the cyber physical systems. So digital disruption describes various changes that impact technology, and then how do we relate, or how does that impact our markets? So that's where, the world has changed. So just for an example, when industrial disruption was like the telephone. Up until then, we would write letters, we would send telegraphs. Once we got the telephone, that was how we changed the way we live our lives. Now, smartphones or cell phones, that is not an industrial disruption because we were already using a phone. So you kind of are splitting hairs, but you're not. So where we are right now is disruption 4.0. So let's talk a little bit about what is the impact of disruptions and what are some lessons learned. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about Blockbuster and Kodak and Sears. These were iconic companies in our history, and yet they've all gone through bankruptcy. I'm from Rochester, New York, so I live in Livonia, which is in the Finger Lakes region of New York. So I don't live in New York City, although our governor is the same. Anyways, little humor there. Kodak is in Rochester, New York. So I grew up in Kodak world. And Kodak, for those of you who weren't aware, they are the ones who developed the very first digital camera. They own the patent on it. And yet they had made a decision that they were going to stick with the traditional film, or what's often referred to as silver halide. They were going to stick to the silver halide or traditional film moving forward. They weren't going to introduce the digital camera in the marketplace. Needless to say, as you all know, digital cameras have taken over the world, and really cell phones, because everyone's buying cell phones because it even has a better camera. Me personally, I'm going to buy a cell phone hopefully this weekend that has a better camera than the one I currently have, because wherever we go, we're taking our selfies, we're taking photos and all of that. So digital photography has way surpassed silver halide. So I was giving this talk one time mentioning this in Rochester, New York, and someone said that was a business decision that Kodak chose to go that route. And yes, absolutely, it was a business decision. But here's the thing, just think if they had the data readily available to them. Think about the impact that the disruption had of digital photography and not having that data and utilizing the data. If they did utilize it, they might have changed their direction and their focus. They might have said, okay, maybe silver halide isn't where it's going to be. Maybe we really need to introduce and get out on the marketplace a digital camera. And if they did that, maybe they'd be in existence today. Blockbuster, here's another one. Blockbuster, my big kids remember when I used to take them to the Blockbuster store and you can get out your VHS tape or your DVD. Well, Blockbuster, for those of you who aren't aware of it, Netflix came to them and offered them $50 million. $50 million, which was a ton of money. It's still a ton of money, right? But a ton of money back then, way back when. And Blockbuster decided not to go with Netflix and accept their offer because they thought how strange it would that people would order subscriptions and order like this membership. Like, that's never going to take off. So it was a business decision. 2 years after they had that $50 million offer, they ended up going through bankruptcy. So the lessons that we can learn from Sears, who basically was our first Amazon, and Kodak and Nokia and Blockbuster, is data provides clarity. And if they had data readily available to them at the speed of thought, these organizations and the executives could have made different decisions. They could have changed their direction. But that didn't really exist, or they didn't utilize what did exist. We need to remember that data provides an insight into the innovative pathways. And we live in a world now where we have tsunamis of data. So how are we going to take that data and turn it into information and then turn it into insight? And that is part of the whole digital transformation. So what is it and what is it not? What it is, it's a process that surrounds on how you create your digital platforms, how you create like an operational excellence platform across all your business units, across all your functional areas that tie directly back to your strategic objectives. If you are not all working in the same direction and path of reaching your strategic objectives, then why are you working on what you're working on? So digital transformation helps you create that digital platform that ties everyone together in your organization and also provides that single point of truth. So people aren't working off of different databases. They have the same database, they're working off the same information, single point of truth. It's also about enabling and empowering employees to be more efficient and sufficient through self-service analytics, through citizen analytics, and through making data-driven decisions in a very timely way at the speed of thought. Because if they have the data there, they can make it at the speed of thought. And they don't have to wait for an IT department, or they don't have to wait for someone to run a report. And now the report is using data that's a week old, 2 weeks old, a month old, because by then it's old news. We want as real-time data as we can possibly get. And if you have real-time data, you can make more efficient and self-sufficient decisions. Digital transformation is also about linking databases and data strategy to create that centralized operational excellence umbrella. So what it's not about simply moving files from analog to digital. It's not about that. It goes much, much bigger than that. It's not about replacing people and processes with robots or new technology. A lot of times when I'm working with clients, I'll hear companies say, oh, well, we're just gonna if we get this new technology, that's our silver bullet. Technology isn't the silver bullet. It's how you put everything together in the whole package. And having that centralized, again, centralized single point of truth. And it is not solely owned by the IT department. Often you'll hear, okay, that's going to be IT department. IT can work on figuring out what technology we have. Now we've come to a world where we need cross collaboration. We need to be able to pull together as a team, regardless of what function you're in, regardless of what business unit you are, and regardless of where you are in the organization. We need to be able to understand the vision and the strategy of what we want to do with data. We need to define, what is our data strategy? What are we hoping to achieve with that data? And how are we going to get it so we are working at a single point of truth? And it is centralized, and it does tie all of our systems together. And that can't just be driven by one group. It has to be driven by a cross collaboration. So 3 critical components. I'm just going to change my screen a little bit here. So 3 critical components of a successful digital transformation journey for any organization. So I don't care if you're talking about healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, customer service organizations, retail, whatever it is, it's still those same 3 critical components, which are your people, your process, and your technology. Not one of those components is stronger than another component. Not one brings more value than any of the other 2 components. It's how they interact together that will end up driving a strong infrastructure within your organization. Now, there's times that maybe people will play a stronger role, or technology plays a stronger role, but at the end of the day, it's the interaction of those 3 components that drive your infrastructure and will ultimately drive your success and how you approach it. So what I'd like to do is on the next few slides, define what I mean by people, process, and technology, and how I put those 3 components together as being critical components. So people is your organization's culture, okay? They're the employees. They're your internal customer. And they should be considered your most valuable asset. So if they're not, they should be considered, because they work for the company, they've trained, they know the processes, and most likely they also have the company's best interests at heart. People also need the right vision and a clear vision for a digital transformation in a leadership position. You don't really want to have a grassroots approach, because a grassroots approach is just bringing it from the bottom up. You want to get buy-in, and you want to get buy-in across the entire organization, starting at the C-suite, going all the way through. Again, going back to cross collaboration, both horizontal as well as vertical. And you need to have a strong leadership that has a strong vision of where is the organization going with their strategic and tactical plan for a digital transformation. And also having that skill set to develop and implement a digital transformation. take a look at the takeaway box at the bottom. When I was doing research for the book, for the field guide, I came across a lot of really, really good information, and this was one of them. It's a study by Dell Computers, and they found two key reasons for digital transformation initiatives failing were both people related. One is a lack of executive support, and the second was a lack of skills within the business to develop and execute a digital strategy. So in the field guide, I had interviewed, oh, I don't know, well over 10 companies and large companies, Best Buy, Cedars-Sinai, um, other hospitals, Coca-Cola. And as I interviewed their executive teams to put all the information together, it was funny because I often found out what their challenges were, and their challenges were either I'm not getting support from the executive team or we don't have the right skills in place. So it goes right back to what Dell Computers found in their research. So people, very, very critical for your digital transformation journey. Next is process. Processes are complex components of any transformation. And what ends up happening sometimes is during a digital transformation, the IT or an a functional group will say, okay, we're going to buy this technology, and this is the technology we're going to use moving forward for our digital transformation. And we're going to tie all of our databases together under one umbrella. But they never did a cross-collaboration effort because sometimes technology doesn't mesh well with the processes that you know are what you need in order to make the products at the quality that you're making them. So it's really important that you get that interaction going. So the way an organization works, goes to market, innovates, those are the way to stay agile and be prepared for the next turn of events. Those are the parts of the processes. It's not just the process of making a widget, it's the processes of running your business, running the organization, and running the operations. So a lot of times companies think digital transformation is, oh, we'll just digitize. We'll just throw technology at it. And again, I can't stress strong enough, like, be very careful of doing that, because most companies that do that end up hitting the restart button again. So the spirit of digital transformation is to improve the existing or create new processes that are efficient and effective for this fast-paced environment that we're currently living in. So again, processes coupled with the people component need to be designed so people work more effectively and they can work more efficiently. So we have self-service analytics, we have citizens analytics, and they can be self-sufficient. Next, the final one is technology. And technology is usually the enabler for change. And that's in any industry. That was with cell phones, that's with computers, that's with anything. Technology is kind of what kind of starts the fire, except in this case, it was the pandemic that kind of started the fire, so to speak. So companies have a tendency to buy technology without, again, understanding the overall impact. So I encourage you, if you're going through a digital transformation journey, don't do that. Find out there's a ton of different technology out there that you can buy. And different technology has a variety of different attributes. One of my friends is the president of a company in New York. And one of the things he said when I talked to him about going through a digital transformation journey and getting a software that overlays, getting a new software, new updated software, where they can be faster with their business analytics and provide more self-service analytics. His first concern was, well, we spent so much money in our legacy systems, I don't want to just get rid of them. Well, there's technology out there that can overlay all of that. So if that's one of your challenges or one of your fears, okay, there's technology that can, circumvent that and put that to rest. So again, try to understand, what is your processes, what do they already look like that exist, and what do you think the future process is going to look like, and what is the best technology for it. Technology is not necessarily tailored for the entire organization, but it should be tailored. You're paying a lot of money for it. And unfortunately, in the past, what we've gotten a lot of times is cookie cutter technology, which creates data silos or data silo warehouses. And what we want is a single point of truth, and we want a centralized database system and centralized digital database. So technology plays a key role, but it's the strength of technology and the people and process together is what creates a strong infrastructure for companies, and it allows organizations to redefine how they work. It's that interaction of how it goes. So when you take a look at your people, process, and technology, and when you take a look at what you want your infrastructure to look like, one of the things that you should be shooting for is that single, complete source of truth, end-to-end governance. That is really critical moving forward. Self-service analytics. You want to promote self-service analytics. Have your employees be more self-sufficient. Have citizen analytics, vendor portals, client transparencies. Have all that working. Constantly innovating and doing it in a way that the customer actually cares about. Because if you think about it, over the past couple of years, but again, more importantly, when the pandemic hit, the consumer turned more digital than ever before. If organizations are going to stay up with the consumer, regardless whether it's healthcare or retail, well, the organization needs to pivot digitally as well, because that's what the consumer has done. And the consumer, everything now with smartphones, it's just a swipe away. So align your strategic goals, align your objectives, and constantly innovate in the way that the customer actually cares about. So I want you to think for a minute, what are some of your organization's challenges with the digital transformation? And think about it in terms of people, process, and technology. Is it that you don't have leadership support? Is it that leadership doesn't have a clear vision? Is it that your employees aren't supportive? Maybe it kind of scares them. Is it that your organization operations are fighting fires all the time? And because they're fighting fires all the time, this is just one of those things that we'll get to it when we get to it, put it on the back burner. Is it something like that? What are some of your challenges? So I'm going to show you a list of challenges that I got from some iconic companies, and I have a feeling a lot of them are going to resonate with you. So some common challenges are the technology. Either your technology is old or there's so much technology out there you don't even know, it's making your head spin. Do we go with the cloud? Do we go with the cloud technology? Do we go with a data warehouse? Do we replace everything that we have, replace our legacy, or do we get something that overlays it? What should we be doing? What is our main goal? What are we trying to collect? What is our data strategy? Another challenge is culture. Culture pushes back. Maybe it's because it's a union organization, or maybe it's a organization that is not really digitally savvy. And so technology and digital stuff kind of scares them. For whatever the reason, they're just pushing back. Maybe it's leadership. Another common challenge is leadership, where leadership doesn't either have a strong vision, or maybe they hire a digital transformation officer to add to their C-suite and kind of say, okay, it's up to him or her. Leadership has to play a key role here. They have to play a key role if your organization is going to be successful. Another challenge is the organization-wide digital transformation. If you think about history where it all began, here were companies, they're moving along. Let's take a manufacturing company, for example. And all of a sudden what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, we're manufacturing, we need a database because we're growing and we need to collect all this data. So we're going to get a database and we're going to collect it. And then maybe a year later, distribution says, hey, you know what? We're doing a lot of shipping. We want to make some improvements. We need a database. So they're going to go out and buy another database, or technology that's not the same as what manufacturing just bought. And then the next thing you know, sales is doing it, and marketing's doing it, and finance is doing it. And so where that got us in the world we are today is everyone's working off of individual databases. And so there's not that centralized database. That's what creates those data warehouses, those data silos. So what we need to have an organization-wide digital transformation strategy as well as ownership. And then another common challenge in the marketplace is the conflicting priorities. We got to make product. We got to get our product out the door. We got to, you're always fighting fires. You're doing continuous improvement, or we did a Lean Six Sigma. Now we're going to do this. But they don't have to be conflicting priorities. They don't have to if they're trying to get us all in the same direction. So, as I mentioned in the field guide, I interviewed well over 10 organizations, global organizations, iconic organizations for their industry. So I wanted to just share a little bit about lessons learned from four of the organizations, which were Best Buy, Coca-Cola Germany, a Canadian financial institute, and Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. When I was putting this talk together, I wanted to, because in the beginning I wasn't sure what industry everybody was at, and I know you guys have a huge chapter, so I kind of wanted to pick a potpourri of industries. So hopefully what I talk about and share with you will resonate with you somehow with what you do. So, and I'm going to go through this quickly. In the field guide, it gets into a lot more detail of each one of what these iconic companies experienced and the lessons learned along the way. Best Buy. Best Buy, to overcome their challenges, they found technology, leadership vision, and digital customer satisfaction were the key drivers here. They said that they needed that leadership vision, and they needed to share that leadership vision over and over and over to every level of the organization. They said technology definitely played a role, because what they needed to do is they recognized that the consumer or the customer had become digital. And if they were going to satisfy their customers' needs, they needed to pivot digitally as well, to be digitally relevant to the digital consumer. And just to give you a little heads up, back in, I think it was 2008 or 2010, Best Buy, their stock price was down to about $11 or $12 a share. And Wall Street had basically written them off, said they're not going to be around, so don't count on them. So here it is 10 years later. And when I was interviewing the president of the business unit that I was talking to, I said, well, what, he was telling me that story, and I'm like, what is your stock price now? Something I probably should have looked up before calling him. But he goes, well, it's over 100. So here during a pandemic, they ended up getting the highest stock price they had ever gotten. And this was a year ago in July, of over 100, where 10 years prior, Wall Street was writing them off. But what they saw is they saw the world was changing, and they saw that their customer was changing. They pivoted to become digitally relevant to the digital customer. They also ended up employing an Amazon business model. So if you go in their stores, you can touch and feel the technology, you can touch and feel anything that they have. And if you want it, guess what? You can have it within 2 hours. You can either walk out of the store and have it in your hand, or let's say you're at home sitting on your deck and you decide, I'm going to order something from Best Buy. They guarantee it will be at your door within 2 hours. So again, having that strong leadership vision, having the communication for ongoing continuous improvement, it never ever stops, and pivoting digitally so they could be relevant to their customer and consumer. Coca-Cola Germany, one of the things that they learned about their digital transformation was they felt that the key things that made them survive and successful was not only the technology of being able to have that single point of truth, having a digital platform that overlaid all their SAP and was able to provide total transparency, vendor portals, transparency to the consumer. They too experienced this paradigm shift because they recognized the consumer was now holding the buying power. They were digital. And so Coca-Cola Germany also had to become digital. Part of the thing that they experienced with the paradigm shift was also the reporting and tracking of operational performance. They knew they needed to have a single point of truth, and they needed to have it at the speed of thought. They needed to have a centralized reporting system and analytics so they could do self-service analytics, citizens analytics. They also went from, they shifted from a push reporting process to a pull reporting process. So for all of you lean experts out there, I thought that was really cool when the director or the vice president at the time of Coca-Cola Germany was saying this. Because I'm like, oh my God, that's a lean tool. And I never really heard it in terms of financial reports going on. So I thought that was really cool. So they went from this push reporting process to a pull reporting process that helped them influence the self-service analytics and the citizens analytics. They created empowerment for their employees. For those of you who aren't aware of this, Coca-Cola Germany, uh, when they well, and it gets into more detail in the book, but Coca-Cola Germany is now Coca-Cola Europe, and they're the largest beverage company in all of Europe. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. So we talked about that self-service analytics and that single point of truth. One of the things that they found is they had employees that we had to go to IT to get reports made, reports generated, so they could get the information, get the data, and then continue to do their research or whatever that they were doing, putting together. So what Cedars-Sinai said is, okay, we're going to bite this off. We're going to bite off our digital transformation in small chunks. And what we're first going to do is we're going to make more of our employees self-service, being able to do self-service analytics. So they provided them with technology that was user-friendly, easy to use, got all the information across the entire organization, and giving it to the employees so they could work on it every day. So they didn't have to go to IT to get a report written. It was all right there at the touch of their hand. And then they learned how not only to use the software, but they learned how to interpret it, how to take this information, take the data and turn it into information and take it and derive insight. So one of the other things that I think it was the chief technology officer said, and the CEO said, I got tired of just, people are reporting, they should be reporting the exact same thing, but they're not because they're all using different databases. So putting a system over their legacy, this umbrella, helped them have that single point of truth. So when executives from different parts of the hospital and the healthcare center were reporting information, they were looking at the same set of data to look at, that single point of truth. And then finally, the Financial Canadian Institution, up in Canada, obviously, they found that one of the things that drove their success was the company culture. They said that was so incredibly critical. And they're also a union organization, so they had that complexity to go along with the whole component of their transformation. And they also said 100% leadership support. When they first started their digital transformation, when they first started their transformation process, what they ended up experiencing was not all leadership was on board. So they had to hit the reset button. And once they realized that all leadership had to be on board, they saw a drastic turnaround with the employees. And the gentleman that I interviewed was a retired CEO from this organization. He says, changing culture is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I thought that was really, it's more than just change, it's that whole transformation. In order to make it stick so they don't go back to the way they were, it takes time and it takes effort. He also said cross and vertical collaboration was key. So we had executives on the same team as people lower in the organization, and they were all equal partners. When they were on a team, they were all equal. And he also said that communication was absolutely key. You couldn't do it without the communication. He said, we made sure we over communicated. We shared the vision across the organization. We had leadership with ongoing communication, and we made sure that different leadership and different people within the organization continued to communicate. So to kind of sum that part up, overcoming the challenges, and I'm hoping that some of this has resonated with you. Communicate on everything. Every organization that I talked to made that really, really strong point that communication, you cannot over communicate. Understand your legacy systems and how they impact your people and your processes. If you can understand that, then you can get the right technology that's going to be best for your organization. Collaborative effort across the organization and empower employees. Employees in general want to do a really good job. So if you have a collaborative effort, it's also easy to get buy-in across the organization, both vertically as well as horizontally. Leadership support and buy-in, and shared vision. Again, those were key components to overcoming any challenges. And then that people, process, technology interaction. Don't, sorry about the airplane going overhead, in case anyone can hear that. The people, process, and technology interaction. Remember, not one is stronger or has more power or more value than the other. They're all equal. It's how they interact that brings the power to the organization. So, initial steps to a successful digital transformation. In order to go on a journey, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of support. And I was struggling with what to do here because I want to share something that you can take away more than just challenges and all that. I wanted to give you like a stepping stone to start from. And at the same time, I can't underestimate, I don't want you to underestimate the effort that really goes into a successful journey. So I thought, well, let me give you 6 tips to get started. One is establish your strategic vision. What do you want it to look like? And don't just think about what you want it to look like in 2022. What do you want to look like in 2025, 2027, 2030? What do you want to look? Think bigger of what is really possible. That is key. And have a team, establish that team that can lead transformation, that shares the vision, that is resilient to the challenges that they overcome and can overcome those challenges, and to think bigger of what is truly possible. Identify your organization's current state in terms of where are we right now? How are we performing? What does our digital platform look like? Do we even have one? But put it in terms of people, process, technology, and infrastructure. Determine your organization ideal state in terms of people, process, technology, and infrastructure. Do a gap and bridge analysis for your current state and your ideal state. Understand how far apart are you? And again, always going back to that people, process, technology, and infrastructure. When you got that gap, you then can start to develop a transformation plan. You can develop a strategic plan, and then you need to develop a tactical plan. But you have the ability to do that because now you have all this information. In the field guide, just to let you know, I've laid out all this where then there's workshops that you have to do, or it's field guide, right? So there's templates there, you fill out the templates. I wanted to make sure that this field guide was something that it wasn't going to be just another book that you throw on your bookshelf, that it was a quick read and it had useful information and that you could actually immediately apply what you're working on immediately. So there's worksheets in there and there's templates in there and to kind of help you get going that follow these 6 steps. And then finally, communicate. Again, I cannot stress enough. You can never over communicate. You really can't. So disruption. I found this cartoon back in April, a year ago, when COVID first hit. And it's funny because the day I found this cartoon, I also happened to be talking to a company I was working with on their digital transformation. They were just embarking on a digital transformation journey. And when the pandemic hit and they had to shut down work for a little bit and all that, they just said, we just don't have time now. We really don't have time. And again, what I said in the beginning is, when are you going to have time? Because today's the fastest day. Today's your slowest day. You're never going to have a day this slow again. So, and I'm sure everyone's really laughing at this cartoon. I know I am every time I look at it. So I think what's kind of cool, I told you in the beginning, I'm a person, I tend to embrace change. I embrace disruption. I've embraced the pandemic because I've seen a lot of good that has come of it on a personal level as well as a professional level. And even with my kids, and the disruption of today compels new thinking and behaviors that end one trend while ironically giving rise to new awakenings that previously didn't exist. So here we are with our journey. So here's some background. I think you guys have that information and that was gone over in the introduction. If you want to get a hold of, if you have questions, I'd love to answer any questions. If you want to take it offline, you can do that. I have my email address here, my phone number. I love to share this stuff with anybody. I can tell you as much as I possibly know, and if I don't know it, I will either find out for you or we'll both learn together. So if anyone has any questions, and I don't even know if I've gone over in time. I haven't. You.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Therese. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think anybody can unmute yourself, but let's do it in this order. I have a question from John NG. John, do you want to unmute yourself and make the question directly to Therese? John NG.
Hi, thank you very much. I bought your book, but I didn't get a chance to read it yet. So
Oh,
hopefully
thank you.
one day you can sign it.
Oh
But
yeah, that'd be awesome.
basically, I started this so-called transformation September 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and right now I'm kind of doing it incognito or in stealth mode. I'm beta testing the software with my night shift, and I've gotten somewhat support that IT bought me a bunch of iPads to do this beta testing from some other I don't know monies, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just trying to justify it software for some reason or other. The money guys says, well, we can't amortize software. And I say, okay, well, we'll buy a server and put the software on and we'll amortize that or something. But that's one of my biggest hurdles right now is trying to provide some cost justifications to the finance guys.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you could maybe give me some pointers on, should I go towards the cost of quality, some other metric that they can relate to and see inherently how this will benefit the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad, John, you're asking this question because I wanted to actually talk about ROI. If there was no questions, I was going to bring up ROI. So first of all, let me just share a quick story. Coca-Cola, and I can actually, if you remind me, if you send me an email, I can send you a Coca-Cola Germany case study where they actually get into ROI a little bit. And one of the questions I asked him was ROI, your return on your investment for your software, was that ever a consideration? And he said, no, absolutely not. That should not be a deciding factor. If your consumer has pivoted digitally, you need to pivot digitally as well. And in order to do that, if you don't do it, the customer's not going to be happy and you're going to lose business. So you need to, software, if it's an expensive route, but it's going to help you pivot digitally to be able to better relate to the digital consumer, you've got to do it. He wasn't the only one who said the same thing. There's another company, they're a large defense contract company, actually the largest one in in the US. And one of the things that they went to is they went to this cloud-based. And I was talking to the chief security officer and I said, why did you go to cloud-based? Was it cheaper than, like standalone? And he goes, no, we had to have end-to-end governance. It's more expensive, but we need that because we're doing military contracts, not only with the US military, but other military, other countries as well. So I think, John, what you're experiencing is you're experiencing people that are being short-sighted. Like your finance people are being short-sighted, and it could end up costing you, it could cost more in the long run.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's an SAS model. So mine is cloud-based. And they're saying, well, it's going to be operations. Once you pay that set amount for,
Hmm.
let's say, 3 years, whatever, right, or
Yeah.
1 year, it's going to be recurring. I said,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a subscription. I don't want. I want it, to have it up there, and then maybe our other sites will eventually go up there and get it. So
Yeah.
that was another issue.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just being very short-sighted. But again, if you shoot me an email, I can send you some information like on the Coca-Cola case study where they talked about a little bit about ROI. Um, again, if your customer is pivoting digitally, if you don't do it, then you won't even be around,
Well,
So
I'm hoping in the couple of months, once we get all the bugs out, go through this beta testing.
okay.
I plan on doing it. We work 3-2-2-3, so I got 4 shifts, 24/7.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that we have data and we can have the dashboard up and running that people can see exactly what we're doing at that given point in time and what metrics they can get to improve their processes. And hopefully then I can persuade my boss to persuade the
Yeah.
finance guys to implement.
Well, when people tell me about digital transformation, they don't know if they want to do it, the cost, all that. My thing is, well, what is it going to cost you if you don't do it? And that's kind of where you're faced with. So,
Yeah, I try to do the narratives such as the blockbuster one, but
hmm.
I don't know if they remember. I don't know if they're that old.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Therese, you want to stop sharing your when you stop sharing your presentation in order that we can see our faces
Yeah,
bigger?
Thank
stop
you.
sharing. Okay, stop sharing. But I don't know if I
Thank you,
can.
John. Yeah, this is no. You are still sharing. You need
Okay.
to.
Oh, wait. Stop sharing. There. Okay.
That's nice. And we have, I think, I'm gonna ask Philip Malowitz. I don't know if you wanna make yourself the question, Philip. Philip Malowitz, no? To the one, to the two. Okay, now. Then, I see comments from Vito. You wanna, Vito, I know it was a comment, but I don't know if you wanna turn it into a question or just share your thoughts, Vito, Manfredi. And I see Jose Valdez. You wanna make a question, Jose?
Yes, thank you, Therese. What I wanted to ask is, in the little experience that I have being involved in trying to make the changes or support the changes, I think, and I say I think because I haven't really led it or completed something. I think it's better when it is left for the department owners or leadership to actually lead the change instead of just like you were saying, hey, that's IT department, you're going to be requested for each department to come 1 hour every week or every month to give some input, and then IT is going to solve anything. If we change the role and IT is the one giving a service, supporting, but being led by the other one, I think it would be better. So I wanted to ask what you think about that, because it is just my thought, my assumption, without actually having lived through it.
So I'm sorry, I might have missed some of your question here. So you're
Okay.
saying have a cross collaboration or don't do cross?
Yeah. Sorry, I was not clear enough. In my experience, it is usually IT leading the change,
Okay. Yeah.
and then asking manufacturing, purchasing, whoever for some input. And then IT goes in the background and they make all the changes. And they think, what about shifting the role.
Right. And that's, Jose, that's exactly where the companies that I interviewed, that's where that was feedback that I was given, where it's not, IT shouldn't be leading necessary the change. You know, IT, you know, the other thing is IT, a lot of times they generate reports. Well, they shouldn't be generating reports. We should be having systems at our fingertips so we don't have to go to IT to get a report generated. We should be able to do it ourselves. There's a ton of software out there that allows us to do that. IT should really be focusing more on strategic visions. But they can't have just IT leading a digital transformation change, because IT doesn't know what you're doing in manufacturing. They don't know what's going on in distribution. They aren't familiar with all the processes that are going on. That's why that cross collaboration, it can't just be, okay, yeah, let me meet with distribution and talk to them for an hour, get some input and go back, and we'll make our decision. It's got to be an ongoing cross collaboration, and it's a team effort to be able to determine what really is going to be the best for the organization moving forward, because it's not just about moving forward in 2022. It's about that long term. What do we want to look like long term, and thinking bigger of what is really possible. And IT can't answer all of that. It has to be a collaborative effort. Did
Thank
that
you.
help?
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Yes, a lot. I will keep pushing.
Okay, yes, do that. Woo.
Therese, can I ask you a question? This is Carol.
Hi, Carol.
And, hi. I really enjoyed your presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
It was eye-opening for me, some of the points you made. I've been a process engineer, and I've worked in financial services and digital transformation. And truthfully, I think you mentioned that process was really important. And one of the things I see that is kind of a sticky point as a process engineer working with IT is that IT works on workflows of a pre-existing process. And like you said, they don't go through the current state, the ideal state, the gaps and the bridges.
Right.
And one of the things I found out as a process engineer mapping the processes, there's a lot of cheat sheets. There's a lot of things that happen before there are approvals by upper management. And the other thing I feel in executive support, I don't think they truly understand the execution part. They may understand the strategic part. So
Right.
I feel a person that can do that translation, and that's what I felt like I ended up doing this job of sort of making that explanation and building those bridges, had partially to do with just the kind of verbiage they used or what their goals were. So stakeholders or managers were focused on the goals and the strategy, whereas people who work on IT were working on the workflows and how to get the code appropriately completed. And then people who are actually doing the jobs and using the automated systems, you know, they had a different perspective. So I don't know if you have some experience on how to bring that kind of thing together as a team. I'm actually, you know, an individual consultant right now, and I want to head in that path of enabling those transitions. So I'd really appreciate your input on that.
Yeah, no, that's, you know, and that is, again, a very common challenge, right? Because IT will set the direction, but they don't know the processes. That's why you have to have that interaction, the three, the technology, the people, and the process. You know, one of the things, let me give you an example on the flip side a little bit. The company I was talking about, the defense contract company, when they went to the cloud-based, I said, well, what were the challenges that you were faced with cloud-based? And again, this is the chief security officer that's giving me all this information. And he said, our engineers really had an issue with it, our design team. And I'm like, well, why did they have an issue? And he explained why, because because their processes, they had to redo all their processes in order to accommodate a cloud-based system. And he said, so it caused a lot of issues for our design engineers and our process engineers. I go, well, why did you do that then? Why didn't you just take into account, all these processes? He goes, because at the end of the day, because we're a military contract and we're working with other governments, we have to have the end-to-end governance. And we couldn't get it to the security level and the cybersecurity level going any other route other than doing the cloud-based. So in a case like that, it's like, okay, you hear what the engineers are saying, but it doesn't matter because for an organization, they had to do it this way. That I get. On other times, though, it's they're not, it's that again, it's the collaborative effort because they don't understand the processes, they don't understand the impact, and the people that understand the processes best, not only are the engineers, but the operators. They know more about a process than probably an engineer does because they know they're working it every single day. And that's why I say the cross collaborative effort, it's not just cross, it's got to be vertical as well. You've got to bring in the people that are operating the process into the effort.
Right.
And
I think I heard you. Yeah, I think that was my challenge also. And I felt like what was not included was what was not said in the process.
yep,
So I would ask questions like, well, how do you deal with this gap? Or, they had cheat sheets or special connections or
yep,
things like that that actually are not visible on the day-to-day operations portion. People sometimes just don't give out that information. They've worked hard or they know somebody somewhere. They just can't introduce one another to those connections. And
exactly.
so there were some missings, and I didn't know if, there was a better way to handle that in the digital transformation that you've known. But I think I heard you saying exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, and that's why, like again, the field guide or what those 6 steps that I went over, the way the template, the worksheets are laid out, it allows you to sit down with a collaborative effort and to be able to say, okay, let's go through it step by step. It's not, there's not necessarily a silver bullet, but you're never going to see that silver lining if you don't get that collaborative effort and actually lay out everything. And that's why the templates are kind of designed, I don't want to say to make it idiot proof, but almost designed to say, okay, now visually, we all understand what's going on.
And those templates are in your book?
They're in the book, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can also provide templates to you as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
That'd be great.
So if you
Thank
want to do it, yeah, if you want to do electronically. Yep. No
Okay.
problem.
I'll contact you by email.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Therese.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I see Robert, maybe want to share something about any thoughts for the presentation today, Robert?
I have one question. I wrote this down in the chat section, but there's a whole group of articles, etc., about keeping. Say again. There's a whole group of articles about uh, uh, talking about the technology and the process actually overwhelming the people part of your equation. Things like midnight requests, the constant barrage of tech updates to go to this cloud, and then that's not the best thing. 18 months later, we've got a new version and we have to relearn everything. The stress levels on employees, in some cases, it's been reported, have actually degraded efficiencies in the organizations. How do we deal with that?
Again, I think to me, it's that planning process because I think what the companies are doing is, especially with the whole COVID thing going on, is in the beginning, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Okay, we got to pivot digitally. Okay, let's just like hire a digital transformation officer. And you hire a digital transformation officer, but it's new for everybody. And I think what's happening is organizations aren't developing a really good tactical plan because they can't develop a tactical plan if they don't really understand where are they currently at and where do they ultimately want to be. So, it's almost like they're putting Band-Aids on things without, just because they know they got to do it, versus saying, okay, let's take a step back. And if this takes us a little longer, it takes us a little longer, but let's do it right, versus putting a Band-Aid on it. And I think that's what's probably going on.
Thanks. That's probably a very good explanation. So you hope that this is going to mitigate itself over time, is what you're saying to me, right?
Yeah, I do. I hope it will, because, but again, it takes that planning process. Anything, you can't just jump in with both feet first without like planning, where do you ultimately want to go? Where's your strategic vision? And one of the things I find a lot, believe it or not, which I find when I'm working with companies, I find a lot of people don't even know their strategic vision or the strategic objectives. Like it's amazing. Like maybe that top, your CEO, your COO, your CFO, maybe they know it, but you go one layer lower, it's amazing how many people don't know it. And usually that's the first question I ask. So do you know your strategic objectives? You don't have to tell me, but do you know 'em? And they rattle off like a mission statement. It's like, no, that's a mission statement. So I think that's another area where there's that gap of not understanding what is my strategic objectives and what do I need to do in order to meet those. So
That's good. I appreciate that. Those are exactly what I was thinking.
okay, good. Whew. Okay, we're on the same
Thank you,
page.
Therese. Thank you, Tony. Sorry I missed your question on the chat. And think while I ask Robert, do you want to just share anything? Because we have been.
I just had one comment. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, very
Okay.
well.
I'm wondering, while you were talking, I'm wondering how this process or program called SAP, I think it's a German outfit, how would that fit into this integration process we're talking about?
Excellent question, Robert. So Coca-Cola Germany, this was the story that the director had told. And he said they started to implement an SAP implementation. And I have never been part of an SAP implementation, but everyone that I know has been just says it's painful, very, very painful. So, well, Coca-Cola Germany, and this was exactly the words he used, the story he told. He said, why we had our heads down working on this SAP implementation, it took us 5 years. And all of a sudden we raised our heads and we realized the world didn't stop and wait for us to get caught up. They just kept going. They were at the lowest market share. They had lost revenue. They were in a dismal place. And that's when they said, you know what? We need to get software that can overlay everything. They chose a business analytics tool that they were already familiar with. They went back to that, overlaid it on the SAP, and within months, literally within months, they gained 50% revenue back. They went from being the bottom on the barrel of beverage industry, all the way to the top. So they struggled with their SAP implementation, didn't get them where they wanted to be, but went back to a business analytics software that they were familiar with and overlaid it on top to create that single point of truth, to create a centralized environment, vendor portals and all of that. And they also trained, that was another thing too, they trained everybody in the entire organization from the CEO all the way down. So truck drivers, everybody, sales, everybody. So, that's how they made it work. Did that kind of answer your question?
Thank you, Therese. And I think if we don't have any other question, we wanna.
Could I just add to Tony's and Robert's
Sure.
question?
Go ahead, John.
So basically, my cloud-based system, it's a low code, which can also be API integrated into SAP, whatever enterprise system. So I was planning to do was to grab the data from the cloud
Hmm.
and Excel, for say, put in the data warehouse, and then have my ERP system do pulls,
Okay.
get that data, and then we can go out and do what we want to do with it.
Okay.
And, so eventually, after 6 months or so, we should be able to do our own coding, write our own scripts, and take care of the software,
Okay.
and hopefully get trained well enough that
Okay.
we could do that. So that was my plan on, Tony and Robin's question.
Okay. Cool. All righty.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Therese. And I'm gonna ask everybody to unmute yourself to give Therese an applause. Please unmute yourself, everybody.
Unmute. Cute.
I was in the middle of eating lunch. That's why I was, off and on from camera and mute.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. If you guys have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to contact me. You have the contact information. I've already provided the presentation. Whatever you need, let me know, because it's a great topic and I love talking about it, obviously, because I haven't stopped talking for the past hour.
Yes, and the presentation, it's already in our MyASQ website. You can just log into MyASQ and download the presentation from the files section there. And in a couple of weeks or maybe sooner, we are going to have the video in our YouTube channel. And it was nice to see everybody. And we are going to have meetings now, in-person meetings starting in August, I think. Okay, so maybe we will start with a networking instead of a meeting, and then we will have these in-person meetings again in Houston. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Therese.
Appreciate
And we're
it.
leaving
Thank you.
before the sun
Enjoy
reach
your
your
summer.
face.
Enjoy your summer.
You too.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.